The room had been full of noise just seconds earlier, a mess of overlapping voices, clinking dishes, and the low hum of forced family cheer, but the moment my grandfather pushed his chair back and stood up, everything stopped as if someone had reached for an invisible switch and shut the world off. He did not shout, and he did not need to. His presence alone commanded attention, the kind built over decades of being obeyed without question. He straightened his back, rested both hands on the table, and looked directly at me, not with warmth or anger, but with certainty, the kind that assumes agreement before anyone has spoken. "I have been paying your rent every month," he said calmly, his voice carrying through the room with deliberate clarity, $1,500, without fail. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating, the kind that presses against your ears until you are painfully aware of your own breathing. Every face turned toward me at once, expressions shifting in subtle but unmistakable ways, curiosity turning to judgment, judgment hardening into quiet accusation. I felt my stomach tighten, not because I had been caught in a lie, but because I realized I had been standing inside someone else's story for years without knowing it. My grandfather continued speaking, filling the silence with his version of generosity, of sacrifice, of loyalty to family, explaining how he had supported me after my parents died, how he had stepped in when no one else would, how he had carried a burden so that I could live comfortably and pursue my life without struggle. Each word landed like a stone, not because it hurt, but because it was false, and yet everyone around me nodded as though they were hearing a familiar truth repeated once more. I opened my mouth to speak, then closed it again, suddenly aware of how fragile the truth can feel when it stands alone against a lie that has already been rehearsed. My aunt shook her head slowly, lips pressed together in disappointment, and murmured something about gratitude being rare these days. My cousin avoided my eyes altogether, staring down at his plate as if the table itself might offer refuge from choosing sides. I felt exposed, not by guilt, but by the knowledge that defending myself would require unraveling years of quiet assumptions. "That is not true," I said finally, my voice steady but low, as if volume alone might make me seem desperate. A few people laughed softly, not cruelly, but dismissively, the way adults laugh when a child insists on something impossible. My grandfather smiled, a thin, patient smile, and shook his head. "There is no need to lie," he said. "Everyone here knows what I have done." And that was when I understood that this conversation was not happening for the first time, only for the first time with me present. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye follow my movement, and placed my phone on the table, my hand trembling just enough to remind me that courage does not erase fear, it only moves through it. "I paid my rent myself," I said. "Every month." My uncle shifted in his seat, the legs of his chair scraping loudly against the floor, a sound that echoed more than it should have. "Sit down," my grandfather said firmly, his tone sharpening. "No," I replied, surprising even myself. The word hung in the air, small but immovable. I unlocked my phone and connected it to the television mounted on the wall. The screen flickering to life as a list of transactions appeared, month after month, year after year, all bearing my name, my account, my responsibility. I scrolled slowly, giving everyone time to read, to recognize the pattern, to understand what they were seeing. Murmurs rippled through the room, confusion replacing certainty, though not. Everyone was ready to abandon the story they had believed for so long. "That does not prove anything," my grandfather said, his voice rising for the first time. "It proves I paid," I answered, my voice steady now, anchored by the truth. "Now I want to show you where your money went." I opened another file, another record, this one marked by transfers that matched the dates and amounts he had just claimed, but the name beside them was not mine. It was my uncle's. The room leaned forward collectively, breath held, as if everyone had reached the same realization at once but needed the screen to confirm it. Then came the messages, brief and unmistakable, instructions sent without hesitation, words that stripped intention down to its core. "He does not need to know. Tell the family I am supporting him. Respect comes from sacrifice." My aunt covered her mouth, eyes wide, while someone whispered my uncle's name like a question they did not want answered. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing as if the right explanation might appear if he tried hard enough. "It is not what it looks like," he said, though his voice betrayed him, cracking under the weight of the evidence. I turned to my grandfather, who no longer looked certain, no longer looked untouchable, but simply old and tired, caught in a moment he had never planned for. You did not pay my rent, I said quietly. You paid for control. You paid for praise. You paid for a story where you were the hero and I was the obligation. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, his authority draining away in the silence that followed. I continued speaking, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the truth to exist out loud, undeniable and complete. I talked about the nights I worked late, the meals I skipped, the choices I made quietly because independence mattered more to me than comfort. I spoke about the promise he once made to help, and how I learned to survive when that promise never reached me. No one interrupted me this time. No one laughed. You told everyone you supported me, I said, while I supported myself. My grandfather finally spoke, his voice softer, almost defensive. I only wanted respect. I nodded slowly. So did I. I turned off the television and picked up my phone, feeling an unexpected calm settle over me. I did not ask for apologies, or explanations, or reimbursement. I did not demand accountability in the way people often imagine justice requires. I simply said I was leaving, because staying would mean continuing to live inside a lie that was never mine to carry. No one tried to stop me. As I walked toward the door, the house felt smaller, its walls closing in on years of unspoken truths. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp, filling my lungs with something that felt like clarity. I still pay my rent. I still work hard. But now, I do not pay for someone else's image, someone else's narrative, someone else's control. And for the first time, that feels like freedom.